Okay, let's dive into this explainer on the dynamics of power and the art of ego management. We're going to unpack those fascinating and, honestly, sometimes kind of uncomfortable unspoken rules that govern basically all of our human interactions. You really have to ask yourself, are you playing the game or are you being played? Because underneath all our everyday conversations, there's this massive hidden current of power dynamics. We are constantly, and I mean constantly, competing for status and influence. But of course, we hide all that fierce competition behind a super thick facade of politeness and, good intentions. But the really smart players, they look right past the polite words being spoken and dig straight into the psychology.
To wrap our heads around this, we gotta look back at history, specifically at what was known as the court. Picture those old royal courts, right? Kings, nobles, advisors, all packed together. Back then, you couldn't just openly fight for power. That was seen as totally uncivilized. Not to mention, it would probably get you killed. So instead, they adapted. They flattered, they manipulated, they charmed, and they built these really complex secret alliances. It was basically linked in with swords. And the wild part? Modern offices, social circles, businesses, they operate the exact same way today. We just swap the swords for better suits. So, let's rapidly break down the 4 baseline rules of this game. Number 1, people crave power, even if they swear up and down that they don't. Actually, claiming to be completely above politics or playing the innocent card, that is very often a brilliant power strategy right there to grab the moral high ground. Number 2, emotions create weakness. Anger, resentment, even love, they cloud your judgment and make you super predictable. 3, study human nature. Watch the patterns. And 4, power almost always works indirectly. Direct force is just too risky. Persuasion or even just strategic silence is way more effective.
There's this quote from the source material that I absolutely love. It describes us as a species powered entirely by emotional Wi-Fi. And honestly, it hits the nail right on the head. That's exactly why studying human nature is absolutely crucial. Look back through history, and people are repeating the exact same behaviors century after century. Panic, envy, greed, vanity, those are constants. Literally, only the technology changes. We might be doom scrolling on smartphones instead of writing with quill pens, but we still completely panic when we're ignored, and we become totally unbearable when we get too much praise. We're just hardwired to react to those emotional signals.
Which brings us to the first, and honestly probably the most vital rule of navigating all this. Never outshine the master. Just let that sink in for a second. The human ego is terrifyingly fragile. I'm talking about entire empires literally collapsing just because somebody felt a little insufficient at a dinner party. This rule is simple but brutal. You absolutely cannot make powerful people, your boss, a mentor, an investor, feel inferior to you. It is a total disaster waiting to happen.
Let's look at a quick historical case study to show just how dangerous this is in practice. Enter Nicolas Fouquet. He was this highly successful finance minister in France, and he decided to throw an unbelievably luxurious, over-the-top party for King Louis XIV. Now, Fouquet's logic made total sense on paper. He figured, I'm going to throw the event of the century, and the king is going to be so incredibly impressed by my loyalty, my massive wealth, and my brilliant taste.
So the crucial point is, that is exactly the opposite of what actually happened. Instead of being wowed, King Louis XIV got intensely jealous. Think about it. Fouquet ended up looking richer and way more glamorous than the king himself. Louis felt completely overshadowed. And the result? Powerful people almost never forgive feeling inferior. Fouquet didn't get a promotion out of this. He got arrested and spent the rest of his life rotting in a prison cell. The party wasn't the mistake. Making the king feel less important was the mistake. Let's move to and see how this builds into a completely different, much smarter approach to managing a massive ego. We all know Galileo Galilei, right? The brilliant astronomer. When he discovered the moons of Jupiter, he was sitting on this piece of incredible, world-changing scientific knowledge. But here's the catch. He still needed funding, and he desperately needed protection to literally just survive as a scientist back then.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Galileo handled his own genius. Instead of going out, showing off to the world and demanding all this personal admiration, he played it completely differently. He strategically linked his astronomical discovery to the incredibly powerful House of Medici. He essentially went to this powerful family and said, hey, the heavens themselves are celebrating your greatness. He made his masters feel glorious rather than threatened by his giant intellect.
And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast between these two approaches. You've got Fouquet, who displayed his own brilliance, totally triggered the king's insecurity because he wanted all the admiration for himself, and got severely punished for it. Then you have Galileo. He reflected all that glory upward, made his rulers feel infinitely greater, gave away the credit, and was heavily rewarded with status, protection, a lifelong salary, the whole shebang. It's the exact same game, but with vastly different outcomes based entirely on how they managed egos.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, this is fascinating 17th century history, but I don't exactly work for a king. Well, let's shift our focus to the modern battlefield. Because while the environment has totally changed, human biology absolutely has not. You still have to navigate these incredibly fragile egos in the boardroom today.
You are dealing with this stuff every single day, on Zoom calls, in meetings, in your social groups. And the stakes are high, right? It's your career, your livelihood. So here are your modern survival rules. If your boss throws out an idea, do not publicly correct them in front of the whole team just to prove how smart you are. Don't try to act like the real leader when you aren't. At the end of the day, we are brutal little social primates, and we promote the people who make us feel secure and competent. Even in your personal life, if you're constantly overshadowing insecure friends, they're going to secretly resent you. Not necessarily because you did anything wrong, but simply because comparison hurts.
But let's take a step back here and be totally objective. Is the author's worldview always right? Are we literally always in a state of hidden warfare? Our explainer sources do acknowledge the limits of this hyper-cynical philosophy. Because if you view absolutely every single interaction as a power struggle, you're going to severely damage your genuine relationships. Real, healthy relationships absolutely require trust, they require honesty and cooperation. You simply cannot manipulate your way into a happy marriage or a true friendship. So, no, not everything is a battlefield.
However, when we're talking about the professional world and navigating complex hierarchies, these insights are pretty undeniable. Our sources sum up the central message with this incredibly wry, knowing thought. A depressing amount of adult life is just managing fragile egos while pretending everyone is being professional. Or, to put it even more bluntly, civilization is basically just theater with invoices. We are all actors on a stage playing our parts, trying really hard not to step on the lead actor's toes so we can just keep getting paid.
Which brings us to the end of this explainer. And I want to leave you with a provocative question to really ponder as you jump back into your daily routine. Take a look around your own workplace theater. Look at your team's dynamics, your managers, your social circles. Who is the master that you might accidentally be outshining right now? And more importantly, what are you going to do tomorrow to make sure their ego feels completely secure so your own success remains uninterrupted? Think about it. Keep your eyes open and keep learning.